before. Great to have you on the programme. I want to start with where we are now and your position, because you took office in 2018. You've got 2 weeks left in office, and one of your dreams, one of your missions was to see Georgia as part of the EU. So tell me about what you're making of events of the last 36 hours.
Well, first of all, I'll start with saying that I don't have 2 weeks left because we are confronting today the stolen elections, the illegitimate parliament, and an illegitimate parliament cannot elect anything but an illegitimate government and an illegitimate president. And my mandate ends when the new legitimate president will be elected. It depends on new elections, which is the main demand of the people that are on the streets. Together with this new demand of new elections, what they want and what they are saying is that they're not going to accept that the Georgian so-called dream tries to take Georgia back into Russia. Clearly, it's not a question of delaying anything, because it's a question of turning around the path of Georgia and taking it to Russia. It's enough to listen to Mr. Putin or Mr. Dugin or whoever else in Russia who is complimenting the Georgian dream for this bravery of abandoning the European path of Georgia. And what is happening in Georgia today is extraordinary, because not only you have mass protests on the streets, and they're growing every day, but this protest is extending to every city of Georgia, which has, in my memory, never happened in that way. And it's also extending to all the different spheres of the Georgian economy, the Georgian state, basically, all the ministries, all the main infrastructure, the central bank. People are leaving, protesting. They're protesting in the port of Poti, which is for the economy very important. They are protesting in the different ministries and social services. We have never had in Georgia this type of reaction of the society and of the different branches. The diplomatic corps, where people are resigning day after day, and that is the sense that this population is not accepting what the one ruling person and the ruling party wants to do, which is to take Georgia back to Russia. That will not happen.
Yeah, you mentioned those leaving their jobs. I think you would see it, I would assume, as a moment of hope that 500 members of the Ministry of Justice, staff walking out over this decision by Georgia Dream. You said something that is also eye-opening, Salome, Madam President, which was the fact that your mandate would ordinarily come to an end. And you're now in a position where you're saying it won't end because you're not recognising this moment along with the opposition. So the question is, what next? Because you're now facing a potential impasse with the government, who is clearly trying to move on to put in place for the first time its own candidate. Because previously, it's worth mentioning to the audience, it was elected by voters, and you are the second non-partisan president in the country. So where is this heading if you won't leave in the next 2 weeks?
Well, it's heading the same way as the parliament. The parliament is not recognized. No opposition party has entered. It's a one-party parliament that has no authority, that has elected a government that is not recognized by either the population or the political forces. And so will be the president, who, by the way, has been chosen for that job, being a footballer without education, but mainly being a representative of the real pro-Russian party that was created by the Georgian Dream on its left side, if left has a meaning, and was one of the initiators of the Russian law. So it's very clear what is happening, and that is why this massive, unanimous reaction of the Georgian population, which will not stop, but which is not what Mr. Kobakhidze is trying to say. It's not a revolution. It's a request. It's a demand for legitimate right to have new elections, because those elections were not only rigged, they were systematically stolen by a Russian method that carried the elections. So as what you're seeing in Romania, which has surprised you all, but you should have looked better at the Georgian elections. And that means that this population is going to ask elections. We are asking all the political forces and me as a president and as the only independent institutions. We are asking new elections. We are asking the EU technical mission that will come here to define what would be the conditions of the new elections, what has to be corrected, how the electoral law has to be redrafted to carry all the recommendations of the Venice Commission. So the road is very clear. It's not revolution, it's stability. And if needed be for this transition period, we might need to have a technical government.
You raise a number of issues, actually, that I want to touch upon, including this former player for Manchester City, Mikhail Kavalashvili, who Georgia Dream wants to see as its next president. Before I ask you about him and what you think his vision, how things would change perhaps with him as president, I would like your thoughts first on the idea. Do you see it like this, that EU officials, observers have said there are many issues with the election, that it wasn't free and fair, that there was essentially threats, there was bullying, there was double voting.
We don't have time to.
Now, all of these issues, it comes down to this. Those that did vote for Georgia Dream, do you see it as the fact that Georgia Dream didn't say anything until now to get that vote and then change their view and halt EU talks once the elections were out the way?
Well, they have been doing that the whole time since we got, and not thanks to them, the candidate status, thanks to the Georgian protests on the street, we got the candidate status. And since then, the ruling party has only accelerated its decisions and its measures that go towards Russia. Russian law was reintroduced, and a number of other laws that all LGBT, that all go against the EU recommendations. So their path to take Georgia away from the European accession talks that could have been opened is a deliberate path, and that's only the aboutissement of this path, the decision to say we push it back to 2028 or whatever. Nobody here believes that there is any delay or any idea in this delay. Everybody knows that it's just going away, and those that see that very clearly are Mr. Putin, Mr. Dugin, that have congratulated Georgian Dream for their bravery in turning the back to European Union. But the Georgian people is not turning its back. The Georgian people will go back on the real path, on the path towards European Union.
Now, you laughed, Madam President, when we talked about Mikhail Kavalashvili, this former Manchester City player, being lined up to be president, who's an independent, that he called himself. Just describe to me how you see the future if this is to pass and he becomes president.
What is to pass? I am just explaining to you that the parliament is illegitimate. So the illegitimate parliament cannot elect a legitimate government or a legitimate president. So they can, inside the parliament, the so-called parliament now, play any role that they want. No opposition party has entered or will enter the parliament. Yeah. So it's a one-party rule that controls all the institutions in Georgia, which the people are now defecting one by one for this very reason, because there is no independent institution. So we are really in a one-of-a-type situation in Georgia that has not happened, but that is a very stable, very peaceful transition towards returning to where we should be.
OK, so that's not a vision that you are looking at right now. You are looking at a continuation of the same situation until something is done about what happened at the election in the aftermath. We need to talk about the man pulling the strings from the castle on the hill, Bidzina. Yeah. Because ultimately it comes down to the founder of Georgia Dream, Bidzina Ivanishvili, this reclusive multi-billionaire that lives in this, well, one of his three houses, this glass palace overlooking Tbilisi. Now, when you came into power, you had an alliance with Georgia Dream, or at least you were independent, but and you're better telling me than I am to tell you. You would have had conversations, one would assume, with Bidzina Ivanishvili, and many would say that his vision for the EU changed over the years. Tell me what you think of what he's doing, whether he is going towards Putin, whether trying to save his own skin, whether he's trying to enrich himself. What's going on?
Well, what's going on is that this party that supported me for my election, that's very clear, was the party that introduced in the Georgian constitution the article that I'm defending today with my teeth, which is the Euro-Atlantic integration of Georgia. So the foreign policy of this ruling party at that time was very clear and was the one that was supported by the Georgian population ever since the independence. They have supported in each government this European, pro-independence path. Now, at the beginning, the evolution of this one party and one man rule was that it became more and more concerned about preserving power when this power erodes, like in every democracy, year after year. But more and more it became clear, and probably it accelerated with the war in Ukraine, that this was not only a question of power and keeping power, but it was a question of turning to Russia. Whether it's due to all the links between the Kremlin and Mr. Ivanishvili that we didn't know about and that appear to be stronger and stronger, or whether it's that they have some compromise over him, or whatever other reason, it really doesn't matter very much today. What matters is that the fact is that this illegitimate ruling party, under the legitimate rule of this one person, Mr. Ivanishvili, is trying to take Georgia where Georgia doesn't want to go, which is back in Russia, back in some form of USSR, and Georgia wants to go in the direction which is development, prosperity, Europe, freedom, democracy, and independence.
Now, you've said before the presidency, as you've made clear, it is largely ceremonial, and the government has tried to impeach you nevertheless in the past while in office. Now, when you were asked in the past about your power, you've quoted Antonio Guterres at the UN and said your power is the power of word. It's what you and I are doing. It's speaking. Now, if we are in a position where we don't know what will pass in a number of weeks, what is your voice, what is your word to EU leaders right now? Is there any more that can be done from outside of Georgia to affect the situation?
Certainly. First of all, what they have been doing until now, which is that no democratic partner of Georgia has recognized these elections, and that's very important. They're sending a technical mission that will help to prepare new elections. I'm talking today with President Duda, and I'm talking tomorrow with the new elected representatives of the Commission, and I'll be talking in these days with everyone and all of my colleagues. I will remain as the main contact and the legitimate contact of our European and American partners, because there is no other legitimate power in Georgia. With me will be a council composed by the civil society and by political parties, will be the transitional, stable power in this country. But we need to go to elections, because there is no question of keeping something transitional which will not receive the legitimate endorsement of the Georgian population. And as to my voice, which is my only power, that is very true. But it's clear that this voice is what the Georgian population wants to hear today. And I'm probably today the most popular political figure and independent figure in this country. So I intend to remain also loyal to this population.
President Ivanishvili, really great to talk to you this evening. The President of Georgia will continue to follow this story and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay with us here on France 24.